The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the worn pavement of the neighborhood. Marcus Johnson walked with purpose, his heart pounding in rhythm with the beat of the city. Disguised in a navy blue hoodie and faded jeans, he blended into the bustling crowd, but beneath the surface, he was anything but ordinary. As an undercover FBI agent, Marcus was on a mission to expose the very corruption that had plagued this community for years. He observed the people around him, their faces a tapestry of resilience and struggle, each story etched in the lines of their features. He passed a group of teenagers laughing and joking, their carefree spirits a stark contrast to the weight on his shoulders. Marcus knew he had to remain inconspicuous, a shadow in a world that often painted him as a criminal before he even opened his mouth. He glanced at a small storefront selling fresh produce, where an elderly woman was chatting with a customer, her voice warm and inviting. It reminded him of the humanity he was fighting to protect, but the task ahead loomed large in his mind. Suddenly, a sharp sound sliced through the air, a car door slamming shut. Marcus turned to see a police cruiser pull up, its blue and white paint glaring against the drab backdrop of the street. Officer Jake Thompson emerged, his presence commanding and intimidating. Marcus felt a surge of anxiety. He had done his best to avoid drawing attention to himself, yet the reality of his mission weighed heavily on him. Thompson was notorious in the precinct, known for his aggressive tactics and a bias so deep it was almost palpable. He had built a reputation for stopping black men under the flimsiest of pretenses, often seeing danger where there was none. Marcus had heard the stories, the unjust arrests, the brutal treatment. He shuddered at the thought of becoming just another statistic in Thompson's growing list of victims. As he continued down the street, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He turned a corner and ducked into a narrow alley, hoping to get lost in the maze of back streets. The sun dipped lower, and the shadows deepened, further cloaking him from the prying eyes of the law. But even here, the weight of his mission pressed down on him. He had to gather evidence that could dismantle a network of corruption that extended beyond Thompson, beyond the precinct, perhaps even reaching the highest echelons of power. Meanwhile, Officer Thompson was not idle. He stood in the precinct, his arms crossed as he spoke with his partner, Officer Roberts. The tension in the room was thick, and Thompson's voice dripped with disdain as he relayed a tip he had received about potential drug activity in the area. "You know, every time I'm out there, it's like I can smell the drugs," he said, his tone laced with bitterness. "These people think they can get away with it. Not on my watch." Roberts shifted uneasily, glancing towards the door as if considering the consequences of Thompson's aggressive pursuit. "But, Jake, you can't just go around stopping every black man you see. It's not right," he cautioned, his voice a whisper. "What if we're wrong?" Thompson scoffed, his steely gaze unwavering. "You think we're wrong? Just look at the statistics, Roberts. They're all involved in something shady. It's our job to clean up this mess. And if that means getting our hands dirty, so be it." His prejudice seeped into every word, painting a grim picture of his worldview. Roberts hesitated, caught between his partner's fervor and his own sense of justice. "I just don't want to catch heat for something that isn't there. We need to follow the law, not just our gut feelings," he replied, trying to inject a note of reason into the conversation. But Thompson was already moving, his mind set on the hunt. "Whatever. You can either follow me or stay back. I'm going to find that dealer, and I know he'll be in the usual spot." With that, he strode towards the door, leaving Roberts no choice but to follow. As they cruised through the neighborhood, Thompson's eyes scanned for any sign of trouble. Marcus felt the adrenaline surge as he spotted the police car approaching. He ducked into a nearby storefront, pretending to browse through an array of colorful scarves hanging by the entrance. His heart raced as he listened to the muffled sounds of the officers conversing just outside. "Look at that guy," Thompson muttered to Roberts, nodding towards Marcus, who stood frozen in the moment. "He looks suspicious. Let's check him out." The words sent a chill down Marcus's spine as he tried to maintain his composure. Marcus took a deep breath, reminding himself of his training. He was not just a victim, he was a man on a mission. He needed to stay calm, to act natural. The officers approached, their heavy footsteps echoing in the confined space. Marcus forced a smile, hoping to disarm the situation with friendliness. "Excuse me, sir," Thompson said, his voice cold and authoritative. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" "Sure, officer," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "What's this about?" He kept his tone even, trying to project an air of confidence. "Where were you heading?" Thompson's eyes bore into him, searching for any hint of guilt. "I was just looking around, checking out the neighborhood," Marcus replied carefully, maintaining eye contact. "Is there a problem?" Thompson stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "You know this area has had a lot of drug activity lately, right? You fit the profile of someone we're looking for." His words dripped with suspicion, and Marcus could feel the heat rising in his chest. "I assure you, I'm not involved in anything illegal," Marcus said, his voice unwavering. "I'm just here doing some community outreach. I'm an agent working with the FBI." The words hung in the air, but Thompson's expression remained unchanged. "Yeah? Prove it. Show me some ID." The challenge was laced with contempt, and Marcus felt the tension escalate. He could see the moment Thompson decided that he was not going to let this go without a fight. "Officer, I really don't think this is necessary. I'm just trying to help," Marcus said, his heart racing as he realized the precarious position he was in. The reality of his situation hit him hard. He was a man caught between his duty and the prejudice of a corrupt officer. "Help? You think you're here to help? You're nothing but a dealer hiding behind a badge. Now, show me your ID, or else I'm taking you in," Thompson barked, his voice rising as he reached for his handcuffs. Marcus's mind raced. He knew he had to think fast. "I really don't want this to escalate, officer. I'm not a criminal. You can call my supervisor if you want," he offered, desperately trying to defuse the situation. "Yeah, right. You think I'm falling for that?" Thompson sneered, his disdain palpable. "You're coming with us." As Thompson moved to grab him, Marcus felt the weight of the injustice crashing down around him. This was not just about him. It was about the countless others who had suffered under the heavy hand of the law. With a deep breath, he steeled himself for what was to come. He had to remain calm, to gather evidence, to expose the truth no matter the cost. Marcus Johnson sat in the cramped holding cell, the cold metal bench pressing against his back and the harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. He could hear the muffled sounds of the precinct outside, shouts, laughter, and the occasional clatter of equipment. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of emotions swirling within him. The arrest by Officer Jake Thompson had been a bitter twist of fate. He had been so close to gathering evidence against the very corruption that had just shackled him. He glanced around the cell, taking in the faces of the other detainees. Each man bore the weight of their own stories, their eyes reflecting a mixture of frustration, anger, and resignation. They were all victims of a system that seemed to thrive on prejudice and brutality. Marcus shifted his focus, reminding himself of the mission at hand. He had to keep his wits about him and find a way to turn this setback into an opportunity. As he leaned back against the wall, he recalled the details of his assignment. Infiltrate the precinct, collect evidence against corrupt officers, and expose the network of injustice that ran deeper than he had initially imagined. He knew he had to tread carefully. His position was precarious, but he was determined not to lose sight of his goal. Suddenly, the cell door swung open, and a burly officer stepped inside, a smug grin plastered across his face. "Look what we've got here," he sneered, pinning Marcus with a condescending stare. "Just another lowlife caught in the act. How's it feel to be on the other side of the bars?" Marcus held his composure, refusing to let the officer provoke him. "I'm not a criminal," he replied evenly, meeting the officer's gaze. "You know that just like I do." The officer shrugged, his amusement evident. "Doesn't really matter what you think. You're in here now, and you'll be lucky to get out without a record. Hope you've got a good lawyer." As the officer exited, Marcus felt a surge of anger rising within him. This was the reality for so many, an unjust system that thrived on the degradation of individuals who were simply trying to survive. He needed to find a way to connect with the other men in the cell. There had to be a way to collectively leverage their experiences into something more powerful than the sum of their parts. He turned to the man sitting beside him, a tall, lean figure with tattoos covering his arms. "Hey, I'm Marcus. What's your name?" The man raised an eyebrow, sizing Marcus up. "Jamal," he replied cautiously. "What are you in for?" "Wrong place, wrong time," Marcus said, trying to keep his tone light. "But I'm curious about what brought you here." Jamal leaned back, his expression shifting from suspicion to interest. "Same old story. Just a couple of grams on me, and they decided to throw the book at me. You know how it is." "Yeah, I do," Marcus nodded. "But I've heard some stories that go deeper than just a simple bust. Police brutality, corruption. It's like a disease in this city." Jamal's eyes narrowed as he leaned closer. "You're not just some guy caught up in this, are you? You're talking like you've seen the real side of things." Marcus took a deep breath, weighing his words carefully. "I'm here to gather evidence. I'm working with the FBI. There's a lot more going on than just random arrests. I need to connect with people who've experienced this firsthand." Jamal studied Marcus for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I've seen things, man. Thompson, that cop who brought you in, he's a real piece of work. He doesn't just arrest people. He likes to make examples out of them. I've heard him brag about the power he has over people in here. Can you tell me more?" Marcus pressed, sensing the opportunity to gather valuable intel. Jamal leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "There's a whole group of them, not just Thompson. They've got their hands in everything: drug deals, intimidation tactics. I've seen them shake down people for cash, just because they can. It's sick." Marcus felt a flicker of hope. "If we can get testimonies from everyone in here, it could be the evidence I need. We could expose them." Jamal's expression grew serious. "You're playing a dangerous game, Marcus. If they find out you're working against them—" "I know the risks," Marcus interrupted, his voice firm. "But if we don't do something, nothing will change. They'll keep hurting people like us." Jamal considered Marcus's words, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, I'll talk to a few of the others. We'll see if we can get some stories together." As they began to plot their strategy, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. Their stories could become a powerful weapon against the corruption that had ensnared them. He was determined to gather as much information as possible, but he also knew that time was of the essence. Meanwhile, in the precinct's break room, Officer Jake Thompson was basking in the glory of his latest arrest. He leaned back in a chair, a smug smile on his face as he recounted the tale to his colleagues. "You should have seen the look on his face when I slapped the cuffs on him," Thompson boasted, gesturing animatedly. "Thought he could just stroll through my neighborhood without consequences. Typical." "Yeah, but what's the deal with this guy?" Officer Roberts asked, a hint of unease in his tone. "You sure he's not just some innocent dude caught in the wrong place?" Thompson scoffed, dismissing the concern with a wave of his hand. "Please, you know how it goes. Every time I see a black man in this area, I know there's trouble. It's just a matter of time before they slip up." Roberts frowned, uncomfortable with Thompson's brazen attitude. "That kind of thinking isn't helping anyone, Jake. We're supposed to protect the community, not treat everyone like a suspect." "Protect? That's a joke?" Thompson shot back, his voice rising. "These people don't respect the law, they just take advantage of it. Someone's got to keep them in line." As the conversation continued, Marcus sat in his cell, heart racing as he realized the depth of Thompson's prejudice. The officer believed he could act with impunity, that he was above scrutiny. But what Thompson didn't know was that Marcus had a hidden recorder tucked away, capturing every word, every confession, every boastful claim of superiority. With each passing moment, Marcus felt the weight of his mission pressing down harder. The evidence he was gathering could not only expose Thompson, but also shine a light on the systemic issues that plagued law enforcement. He was ready to fight back, to turn the tables on the man who had wronged him, and to ensure that the stories of his fellow detainees were not lost in the noise of a corrupt system. In that holding cell, alliances began to form, and the seeds of resistance were sown. With Jamal's help, Marcus knew they could gather the testimonies they needed. He had to remain vigilant, to keep his head down and play the role of a victim while secretly working to dismantle the very structure that sought to oppress them. As night fell over the city, a sense of determination filled the air. In that moment, Marcus knew he was no longer just a pawn in this game. He was a player, and he would not be silenced. The fight for justice had only just begun. In the dim light of the holding cell, the air was thick with a sense of desperation and unresolved anger. Marcus Johnson leaned against the cold, metal wall, his heart racing as he surveyed the other inmates. Their faces were etched with stories of pain and injustice, yet there was a flicker of resilience in their eyes. He had been in this situation before, but never like this, never as an undercover FBI agent caught in the web of systemic corruption. He needed allies, and he needed them fast. Across the cell, Jamal, a wiry young man with a quick smile that belied the anger simmering just beneath the surface, caught Marcus's gaze. He had been listening intently as Marcus shared snippets of his own fabricated story, a tale of wrongful arrest and a quest for justice. Jamal, who had been in and out of the system for minor infractions, had seen enough to know when someone was genuine. "You're not like the others," Jamal said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You actually care." Marcus nodded, grateful for the connection they were forming. "I'm here to gather evidence. Thompson, the officer who arrested me, he's dirty. I need your help. Can you tell me more about what you've seen?" Jamal leaned forward, the determination in his eyes sharpening. "Thompson? Yeah, he's a piece of work. You should hear how he talks to us, like we're nothing. But it's not just him. There's a whole network of them. They protect each other, run their own little empire." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "If you can help me gather more evidence, we might be able to expose them. I need you to keep your eyes open and report back anything you see." "Anything that could help." Jamal nodded, his expression serious. "I can do that, but you gotta be careful. Those guys don't play. If they catch wind of what you're doing, they won't." Marcus interrupted, his tone firm. "I'm not going to let them intimidate me. I'm playing a long game here." As they spoke in hushed tones, the door to the holding cell creaked open, and Officer Thompson strode in, his presence dominating the small space. The inmates fell silent, the tension palpable as Thompson's eyes narrowed, landing on Marcus with a predatory glint. "Looks like you've made a friend, Johnson," he sneered, stepping closer. "I hope you're not sharing any of your little fantasies about being some kind of hero. We both know the truth. You're just another lowlife trying to play the system." Marcus met Thompson's gaze, refusing to back down. "I'm not afraid of you, Thompson. You're the one who should be worried." The officer's laughter echoed off the cell walls, a cruel sound that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. "You think you can intimidate me with your bravado? You're in my world now. I can make your life hell, and trust me, I will." "Why do you need to hide behind your badge?" Marcus shot back, his voice steady. "It's weak. You're nothing without it." Thompson's expression darkened, his fists clenching at his sides. "You don't know what you're doing, Johnson. You're playing with fire, and I promise you won't like the burns." As Thompson turned to leave, Marcus's heart raced. He had to play it smart. He had to remain calm. "I'm not the one who should be worried, Thompson. You think you're untouchable, but every empire falls." Once Thompson was gone, Marcus turned back to Jamal, who had been watching the exchange with wide eyes. "Damn, you've got guts. Most guys would have just cowered." "I'm not most guys," Marcus replied, a small grin forming. "And neither are you. We need to make a plan. I'll keep gathering evidence, and you keep your ear to the ground. If you hear anything about what Thompson and his crew are up to, let me know." Jamal nodded, his resolve strengthening. "I can do that. I'll watch and listen." They're too caught up in their own game to see what's coming. As the hours passed, Marcus felt the weight of the situation pressing on him. The walls of the holding cell felt like they were closing in, but he refused to let despair take hold. He had a mission, and he was determined to see it through. Meanwhile, Thompson was reveling in his perceived power. He had always considered himself above the law, a protector of the peace, even as he exploited the very community he was sworn to protect. With a swagger in his step, He entered the precinct, eager to share his latest triumph with his colleagues. "Hey, everyone, gather around," Thompson called out, a smug grin plastered on his face. The officers looked up, curiosity piqued. "You're not going to believe what I just did. I bagged a real piece of work today. A drug dealer right in the heart of the neighborhood." Officer Roberts, his partner, looked skeptical. "You sure about that? I mean, we've seen a lot of innocent people get swept up in this mess." Thompson waved him off dismissively. "Innocent? You think that matters? We've got a job to do and I'm doing it." This guy was asking for trouble. You all should have seen him, standing on the corner like he owned the place. "You might want to be careful, Jake," Roberts cautioned. "This could backfire." "Backfire?" Thompson scoffed, leaning against the desk with an air of arrogance. "I'm untouchable. I've got this city under my thumb. They know better than to mess with me." Back in the holding cell, Marcus was piecing together a plan. He had to stay focused to gather more evidence without drawing attention to himself. He pulled out his hidden recorder, adjusting the settings to capture everything he could hear, every conversation that might slip through the cracks of the system. As he sat quietly, listening to the whispers of the other inmates and the distant sounds of the precinct, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for everyone who had ever been wronged by a system that was supposed to protect them. Hours later, after what felt like an eternity, a new group of officers entered the holding area, their laughter echoing ominously. Marcus strained to listen, hoping to catch something that might aid his cause. "Did you hear about the big deal going down next week?" one officer said, his voice low. "The higher-ups are getting involved, and Thompson wants a piece of the action." Another officer snorted. "That guy's got no idea what he's messing with. You think he can handle that kind of heat?" "Just wait," the first officer replied, a hint of amusement in his tone. "He'll either rise to the occasion or crash and burn. Either way, it's going to be entertaining to watch." Marcus's heart raced as he absorbed the information. This was the break he needed, the connection between Thompson and something much larger, something that could expose the entire corrupt network. He had to be careful, he had to play it smart. The walls of the precinct were closing in, but he could feel the tide turning. As the officers continued their banter, Marcus felt a sense of urgency. He had to get this evidence out before it was too late. With Jamal's help, he could gather more information and start building a case that would shake the foundations of the precinct. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He was ready to confront the darkness, to shine a light on the corruption that had festered for far too long. The game was on, and he was determined to win. The dim, fluorescent lights of the holding cell flickered overhead, casting a harsh glow on the faces of the detainees. Marcus sat on the cold metal bench, his mind racing. He had to get the evidence out. Every moment was critical. Jamal, the young man he had befriended, paced nervously in their small shared space. The plan was simple yet dangerous. Jamal would help him sneak out a flash drive containing recorded evidence of police misconduct, which could implicate Officer Thompson and his corrupt colleagues. "Are you sure about this, Marcus?" Jamal whispered, glancing towards the barred door, his voice laced with apprehension. "If they catch you, I know the risks," Marcus replied firmly, determination etched on his face. "But if we don't do this, nothing will change. They'll keep hurting people like us. We have to fight back." Jamal nodded, his expression shifting from fear to resolve. "All right, I'll do it. Just tell me what I need to do." Marcus took a deep breath, his heart pounding as he retrieved his hidden flash drive from the cuff of his pants. He had managed to record not only the discussions with his fellow inmates, but also snippets of Thompson's rants and the conversations he overheard about the drug deals involving officers in the precinct. "Here," he said, handing the small device to Jamal. "You need to get this to my contact outside. He'll know what to do." "Where do I meet him?" Jamal asked, looking into Marcus's eyes for reassurance. "Behind the old diner on 5th Street. It's a safe spot, no one goes there. Just be careful, and don't let anyone see you." Jamal took the flash drive, the weight of their mission heavy in his pocket. "You know I've got your back, right? I won't let you down." I know you won't, Marcus said, squeezing Jamal's shoulder. Just hurry. Time is against us. As Jamal slipped out of the cell when the guard made his rounds, Marcus felt a surge of hope. This could be the turning point. But as the minutes ticked by, anxiety wrapped around him like a vice. He leaned back against the cold metal, listening intently to the sounds of the precinct outside, praying Jamal would succeed. Meanwhile, Officer Thompson was growing increasingly suspicious. After learning about a possible leak in the precinct, he had turned his attention back to Marcus. Their last confrontation had ignited something dark within him, a relentless need to assert his power and superiority. He couldn't let Marcus escape the clutches of his authority. "Roberts!" Thompson barked, storming into the squad room, his face a mask of anger. Officer Roberts, his partner, looked up from his desk, startled. "Get in here." "What's going on, Thompson?" Roberts asked, rising from his seat, wariness creeping into his voice. "Something isn't right with that Johnson guy. He's too calm, too collected. I want you to keep an eye on him. I have a feeling he's up to something." Roberts hesitated, glancing at his partner. "You think he's involved in something bigger? Like maybe he's connected to the drug deals?" "Exactly," Thompson said, his eyes narrowing. "And if he is, I want to know how deep this goes. We can't let him walk out of here with anything that could expose us." Thompson's voice dripped with venom, revealing the prejudice that lurked beneath his facade of authority. Roberts, sensing the tension, nodded slowly. "All right, I'll watch him." "Good," Thompson said, a malevolent smile creeping across his face. "And if he tries anything, you know what to do." Roberts swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Thompson's words. He had always been uncomfortable with Thompson's methods, but had followed him out of fear of losing his job. Now he felt the pressure mounting. What if Marcus was telling the truth? What if he was innocent? The thought gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside. He needed to be loyal to Thompson, or he risked becoming a target himself. In the holding cell, Marcus remained vigilant. He could feel the oppressive atmosphere thickening around him, sensing that Thompson was onto him. If Jamal didn't return soon, he might have to think of another way to get the evidence out. Just then, the door swung open and Thompson sauntered in, his presence filling the small room with tension. Well, Thompson sneered, leaning against the wall with a sinister grin. "Look who we have here, the undercover hero. How's it feel to be on the other side of the bars, Johnson?" Marcus met his gaze, unflinching. "You think this is a game, Thompson? You're the one who should be worried." Thompson's smile faded, replaced by cold fury. "You think you're clever, don't you? Playing the victim card. But I see through your lies. You're just another thug trying to make a quick buck." "I'm not a thug," Marcus shot back, his voice steady. "And you know it. You're the one abusing your power, trying to intimidate me because you can't stand the idea of being exposed." Thompson stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "You're going to regret those words, Johnson. I can make your life a living hell in here. You think your little recordings will save you? I'll make sure they disappear." "Go ahead," Marcus challenged, his heart racing but his resolve unwavering. "You can't intimidate me. I know what you're doing and I have evidence. You're the one who should be worried about what's coming." The tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Thompson's eyes blazed with fury, but he masked it with a mockingly calm demeanor. "You think you're so brave, don't you? But let me tell you something, this isn't just about you. You're playing a dangerous game and you're going to lose. I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are." Marcus felt the weight of Thompson's words but stood his ground. "You can try, but you won't win. I have allies out there, and they won't let this go unnoticed." Thompson leaned closer, his voice a low growl. "You think you have allies? You're just a pawn in a game you don't even understand. You're surrounded by people who don't care about you, who will turn on you without a second thought." "Maybe you're the one who doesn't understand," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I'm not alone, and I won't back down. You're the one who's afraid. Fear? Me?" Thompson laughed, the sound hollow and menacing. "You're delusional. But mark my words, Johnson, I will find a way to silence you. You'll wish you had never crossed me. With that, Thompson turned on his heel and stormed out of the cell, leaving Marcus alone in the oppressive silence. The confrontation had rattled him, but it also solidified his resolve. He couldn't let Thompson win. He had come too far. As he sat back on the cold metal bench, Marcus's thoughts raced. He needed to stay focused. Jamal was out there, risking everything to deliver the evidence. He had to trust that his friend would return before the walls closed in on him. Despite the fear and uncertainty, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. This fight was far from over. The fluorescent lights of the FBI office flickered as agents gathered around Marcus's evidence, their faces illuminated by the glow of computer screens. The atmosphere was electric, filled with urgency and determination. Lead Agent Sarah Mitchell, a sharp-minded woman in her 30s, stood at the front, her arms crossed as she addressed her team. "All right, listen up," she commanded, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "We've received solid intel from Marcus Johnson. This precinct is rotten to the core, and it's time we root out the corruption. We're launching an internal investigation." Marcus stood off to the side, his heart racing. He had risked everything to gather this evidence, and now, as he watched the agents work, he felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. He knew the stakes were high, not just for him but for everyone involved. The officers at the precinct were beginning to sense the tension, and fear was already creeping into their ranks. "Who's going to be our point of contact inside the precinct?" an agent asked, glancing at Marcus. "Jamal has been invaluable," Marcus replied, stepping forward. "He knows the inner workings and can help us navigate through the chaos. If Thompson suspects anything, things will escalate quickly." Agent Mitchell nodded, her expression serious. "We'll need to establish a secure line of communication with him. We can't afford any slip-ups." Meanwhile, in the precinct, the atmosphere was thick with paranoia. Officer Jake Thompson paced in his cramped office, his brow furrowed with anxiety. The walls felt like they were closing in on him. He could sense that something was amiss. His fellow officers whispered in corners, casting furtive glances his way. "Hey, Thompson," Officer Roberts said hesitantly, entering the office. "You all right? You've been acting strange." "Strange?" Thompson scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "I'm fine. Just keeping my eyes open, that's all." Roberts shifted uncomfortably. "You sure? I heard some talk about an internal investigation." "Could be nothing but internal investigation," Thompson interrupted, his voice rising. "Those pencil pushers don't know what they're dealing with. They can't touch us. We're the law." Roberts took a step back, sensing the anger radiating from Thompson. "Just be careful, man. You're not the only one at risk here." "Risk?" Thompson sneered. "I've got nothing to hide. But I swear, if that bastard Johnson is playing us, I'll make him regret it." As Marcus and the FBI team continued their preparations, he couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. He was acutely aware that Thompson was growing suspicious of him, and the last thing he needed was for the officer to dig into his background. "Marcus," Agent Mitchell called, pulling him from his thoughts. "We need you to arrange a meeting with Thompson. We need to know what he's up to, and if he's got anything connecting you to the investigation, we need to neutralize it." Marcus nodded, determination etched on his face. He had been preparing for this moment, knowing that he had to confront Thompson directly. "I'll set it up. I can feign interest in making a deal. It'll give me a chance to gather more information. Just be careful," Mitchell warned, her tone grave. "This man is dangerous, and we can't afford to lose you." The next day, Marcus took a deep breath as he stepped into the precinct, his heart pounding in his chest. He approached Thompson's office with an air of confidence, masking the turmoil beneath. He knocked on the door and entered without waiting for a response. Thompson looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion. "What do you want, Johnson?" "Just wanted to talk," Marcus replied, keeping his tone casual. "Heard some things around the precinct. Thought we could discuss." Options. Thompson echoed, leaning back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. What kind of options? Marcus chose his words carefully. I know you're under pressure. I thought maybe we could reach a mutual understanding. You scratch my back. I scratch yours, you know? Thompson's demeanor shifted, a predatory glint entering his eyes. You think you can negotiate with me? You're just a nobody trying to play the system. Maybe, Marcus replied, forcing himself to remain calm. But I'm also someone who knows what's going on. I've seen things and I'm not afraid to speak up. You know how it works in this line of work. The tension in the room thickened as Thompson leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I suggest you watch your mouth, Johnson. You don't know who you're dealing with. Marcus's heart raced, but he stood his ground. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Officer Thompson, and I'm not afraid of you. Thompson's face contorted with rage as he stood abruptly, looming over Marcus. You think you're tough? You're nothing but a little punk trying to play a dangerous game. I could ruin you in an instant. Marcus felt the weight of the threat hanging in the air, but he was resolute. You can try, but I'm not going down without a fight. For a moment, they stood locked in a battle of wills, each assessing the other. Thompson's mind raced with the implications of Marcus's words, and he felt a twinge of fear beneath his bravado. Get out of my office, Thompson finally spat, rage boiling beneath the surface. Before I change my mind about what I'm willing to let slide. Marcus turned to leave, but not before catching a glimpse of the officer's trembling hand. He knew he had struck a nerve. As he walked away, he felt a surge of adrenaline. This was more than just a game to him. It was a fight for justice. Outside the precinct, Marcus took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs. He hadn't gathered any concrete evidence during the confrontation, but he had planted a seed of doubt in Thompson's mind. He needed to act quickly. The clock was ticking, and he could feel Thompson's paranoia growing. Back in the FBI office, Marcus recounted his encounter to Agent Mitchell. He's scared, Sarah. I can see it in the way he reacted. He knows I'm on to him, and he's beginning to realize that I'm not just some random guy he can push around. Mitchell nodded, her expression contemplative. That's good news. Fear can make people make mistakes. We just need to stay one step ahead of him. As the team regrouped to analyze the situation, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was in a dangerous game, but he wasn't backing down. The evidence he had collected was just the beginning, and he was determined to see this through to the end. In that moment, he understood the weight of his mission. Not just for himself, but for everyone who had suffered at the hands of corrupt officers like Thompson. He was fighting for justice, and he wouldn't allow fear to dictate his actions. The battle was far from over, and he was ready for the fight ahead. The dimly lit room bore witness to an impending storm. The air was thick with tension as Marcus Johnson sat across from Officer Jake Thompson, the very man who had orchestrated his wrongful arrest. Marcus' heart raced. He had set this meeting to ensnare Thompson in his own web of corruption. He leaned back, attempting to mask the adrenaline coursing through him with a calm facade. Let's cut to the chase, Thompson, Marcus said, his voice steady but laced with an urgency that belied his exterior. I know what you've been doing. You're not just a cop. You're a criminal. Thompson's expression twisted into a sneer, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. You think you can come in here and threaten me? You're nothing but a nobody. A low-life scumbag trying to play the hero. The contempt dripped from his words like venom. He gestured dismissively. You're just another one of those people who thinks they can take me down. You're going to regret this. Marcus felt the pressure of Thompson's gaze, but he refused to flinch. Regret? You're the one who should be worried. I've got evidence of your corruption, Thompson. I know about the deals you've made, the drugs you've let slide through your fingers for a price. You think I'm alone? The FBI is on to you. Thompson chuckled, an unsettling sound that echoed in the small room. Do you really think they'll believe you? You're just a black man looking to shift the blame. I'm a decorated officer. You're nothing but a blip on my radar. His bravado was palpable, but Marcus could sense the cracks forming beneath the surface. Decorated for what? For harassing innocent people? For planting evidence? You've built your career on the backs of the very people you're supposed to protect, Marcus shot back, his voice rising with indignation. And now you're going to pay for it. The tension in the room intensified, a palpable electricity that seemed to hum between them. Thompson's bravado faltered for the first time as he leaned back, his face a mask of disbelief. You think you can take me down just like that? You're a fool. Just as he was about to unleash a torrent of threats, the door burst open. Agents from the FBI flooded into the room, their badges glinting in the harsh light. Hands up, Thompson. You're under arrest for conspiracy and corruption. Thompson's face morphed from disbelief to rage as he realized the trap had been set. What the hell is this? He shouted, scrambling to his feet. But he was quickly subdued by two agents who had moved with practiced efficiency. Marcus, are you all right? One of the agents asked, concern etched on his face as he moved to ensure Marcus was unharmed. I'm fine, Marcus replied, a wave of relief washing over him as he took in the scene. Thompson was cuffed and seething, his face a portrait of fury as he glared at Marcus. This isn't over, Johnson. You'll pay for this, he hissed, his voice low and menacing. Marcus met his gaze squarely, feeling a surge of triumph. You're the one who's going to pay, Thompson. This is just the beginning. As the agents escorted Thompson out of the room, the weight of the moment settled heavily on Marcus's shoulders. He had faced down the man who had tried to ruin him and had emerged victorious. But there was still work to be done. Outside, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as news of Thompson's arrest spread like wildfire through the precinct. Officers and civilians alike gathered, their expressions a mix of disbelief and relief. The community had long suspected corruption within the department, but to see it come to light was a victory they had only dared to hope for. Among the onlookers, Marcus spotted Jamal, his ally from the holding cell. Jamal's face broke into a broad smile as he approached. You did it, man. I can't believe you actually did it. Marcus chuckled, the tension in his chest easing slightly. It's not just me. We did this together. Your help was crucial, Jamal. Jamal nodded, his expression turning serious. I just hope this is the beginning of a change. We need to clean up this system from the inside out. Marcus looked around at the gathered crowd, their faces reflecting a mix of hope and determination. This is just the first step. We have to keep pushing for accountability. We can't let this moment slip away. As the news reporters arrived, cameras pointed in their direction. Marcus found himself thrust into the spotlight. He had been a shadow for so long, but now the world was watching. He took a deep breath, willing himself to remain composed. Marcus, how does it feel to bring down a corrupt officer? One of the reporters shouted, microphone extended. It feels like a victory for all of us who have been silenced, Marcus replied, his voice steady. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who has suffered at the hands of those who are supposed to protect us. We need to stand together and demand change. As he spoke, a wave of emotion washed over him. The anger, the fear, the uncertainty. It all began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of purpose. He was no longer just an undercover agent. He was a voice for the voiceless. In the days that followed, Thompson was charged with multiple offenses, and the investigation into the precinct revealed a vast web of corruption that extended far beyond what Marcus had initially uncovered. Officers who had long operated under the cover of their badges were now facing scrutiny, and the community began to see the first glimmers of hope for reform. At a community meeting held to discuss the events, residents gathered to voice their concerns and aspirations. Marcus stood at the front, flanked by community leaders and activists. The energy in the room was electric as people shared their stories of injustice and resilience. We need to unite, Marcus urged, his voice ringing with conviction. We can't let fear dictate our actions any longer. Together, we can hold those in power accountable and create a system that truly serves the people. As the meeting progressed, Marcus felt a swell of pride. The community was rallying around him, and it became clear that this was more than just a fight against one corrupt officer. It was a movement toward justice and equality. In the aftermath of it all, Marcus found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He had faced unimaginable challenges, but he had emerged stronger, with a renewed sense of purpose. He had shown that resilience could triumph over adversity, and that change was possible when people stood together. As he looked out at the faces of those who had supported him, Marcus realized that true strength lay not in individual victories, but in the collective will to fight against injustice. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a profound sense of hope for the future, a future where the community could reclaim its power and strive for a justice that was truly just. If you liked the content, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and share it with your friends. Your comment is essential for the growth of the channel. And look at this video that appears on the screen. See you soon.